Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking with my friend Robyn, who's a holistic health coach who specializes in women's fertility. And Robyn and I share something that I kind of wish we didn't share, and that's our long journey with infertility all the way to IVF. And I can tell you that is such a difficult journey. But happily, we both got our beautiful daughters from IVF and we became friends. In this episode, Robyn and I will be talking about our struggles with fertility and what diet, and especially sugar, has to do with fertility and infertility. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. And this week's episode is brought to you by the Life After Sugar program, which is where you'll get the step-by-step guidance you need from me to help you let go of sugar and the emotional hold it has on you so that you can get to a place of freedom where you don't even need, want, or miss it anymore. If you're ready to start living your life after sugar and feel more confident, healthier, and full of energy without feeling deprived, without needing willpower, then the Life After Sugar program will help you get there in just 12 weeks. Letting go of sugar and finding true freedom from sugar is much easier when you have a proven structure to follow. With my experience of 7 years of living happily sugar-free and with almost 30 years experience as a teacher, I've created a structure for the Life After Sugar program that will allow you to get to a place where you don't want, need, or miss sugar anymore. And in the Life After Sugar program, you'll get the help, the guidance, and the support to experience real, deep, and lasting freedom from sugar. And you don't have to do it alone. Check out everything that's included in the Life After Sugar program at aftersugarclub.com, and in the top menu, click on the Program tab. That's aftersugarclub.com and click on Program. All right, so here's my chat with Robyn. All right, today I'm talking with Robyn Boyce, who's based in Toronto, I think. Is that right?
Just north of Toronto.
All right. And Robyn, can you tell me a little bit about what your life was like when you were still consuming lots of sugar, or how you grew up with basically a sugar-full diet?
Oh, well, for sure. I was born in the 80s. So I was born in 81, and that was the big convenience food revolution. And I'm convinced that to no one's fault, my parents, not their fault, but that was like all these new things came into the forefront of being convenience. And of course, when you have convenience foods, it's usually loaded with sugar, whether it's a savory meal or not. There's, that's the misconception that people think, well, I'm eating a hot dog. How is there sugar in a hot dog? But it doesn't matter whether it's a sweet food or a savory food. It can be packed with sugar. And yeah. I really feel like, that was sort of one of the downsides of the 80s.
And so did you have those convenience foods because both your parents worked full time?
Yes, for sure. I think that it gave a sense of like it was helpful for parents in the 80s, because that's when a lot of families were having to go to double income it was helpful. And I'm sure there was maybe some relief, like, oh, good, I'm going to go buy this, microwave, whatever it is, so that, my kids can eat well, because I'm not home or I don't have time. They just didn't know back then. Like they just didn't know back then. But yeah, that's probably what it was. And like I said, maybe the excitement of it too. Like, oh, wow, like I can buy this home cooked meal that goes in a microwave. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I can, look like I'm serving home cooked meals, but, zap them in the microwave, which honestly, I grew up like that as well, because my mum worked full time, and I say parents, but let's face it, it's the mom.
Of course. I agree.
And she wanted to feed as well. It's all with the best of intentions. It's just that, she just got home at 7 p.m. and, after everything else, there was just no time to start whipping up home cooked meals.
Absolutely. And it wasn't as accessible as it is now.
And they didn't know about the ingredients in these convenience meals, you mean?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't even think packages had ingredients lists or nutritional information. I think that came in later as a law, but I don't even think that was an issue. Like, you just kind of almost trusted, marketing.
Yeah. The food industry.
Yeah.
Giving you a very kind, helpful hand and then kicking you up the bum afterwards.
Yeah.
And so this is how you grew up, just basically, I would say normally, or I don't like to use the word normally. Actually, it was a common way for most people to eat in North America and in Western Europe as well. That's where I was, in England.
Right. Yeah.
So we share that. So you grew up that way. And then, so what? What did that do to not just your health, but what did that do to your relationship with food and, these ingredients? Can't mention the word sugar, surely, specifically.
Well, I actually was overweight as a child, or I guess overweight. I mean, yeah, I wasn't a thin child, so I definitely know now that was probably a big factor of just, and like I say, it's just, the information wasn't there. So it was just kind of like, eat whatever you want. Like, we knew the basics weren't healthy, but sugar, I guess, in my opinion, sugar was seen as like, yeah, it's not healthy, but okay. The information of all the other things that it causes now wasn't available. So it was like, yeah, well, we can indulge a little bit here because all it's going to do is, it's just unhealthy. Maybe it would attribute to your weight, but, that's it. And so I think that it was just easier. It was easy to just justify, eating a poor diet because people just thought it contributed to your weight, I feel like. And if you weren't struggling with weight, you were okay. Like, beat it. You don't have a weight issue. No one back then understood, or I mean, that's kind of a blanket statement, but general society didn't understand the implications of, a poor diet other than your weight. And so, yeah, like I was overweight as a child. And it came down to food. I mean, I was active, I played sports, but it came down to food. I was probably not eating the greatest.
And did you, when you were older, did you continue that pattern when you were actually responsible for buying your own groceries?
No, that's when I had sort of started to, I got excited when I got to buy my own groceries. And I remember being in high school and I had already, by this time I wasn't, that chubby little girl anymore. Like I had thinned out. I was very active. I was an athlete in high school. I played a lot of sports. So that really helped. But what happened was in high school, my mom, I have two sisters. So my mom implemented, again, a working mom, implemented this thing in our house where we each had to take a turn cooking. And my mom said, I don't care what it is. Like, you could literally open a can of beans and cook them, but I just don't want to do it. You need to do it. And so my sisters kind of did that, like, whatever, like they would just cook whatever that was simple. But my mom knew something was different about me, because that's when my love of cooking came in, and, ingredients and healthy, good ingredients, because I would whip up these like big meals and serve them to my family. And, and my mom's like, you don't have to do this. I'm like, I want to. That's when my love of cooking came in. And I realized that there were so many just different ingredients and, different things that can flavor food, other than what we had been doing.
Right. Yeah. What a discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So then to answer your question, so then when I got out on my own and I lived on my own, that was just like, I got to just buy all my own groceries. And that's when I just started spending a lot of time in the grocery store. Well, I worked in a grocery store through high school.
Cool.
So I had a lot of time to peruse ingredients, and, there's a lot more than it. You can get very tunnel vision in the grocery store. You can get so I worked in a grocery store, and I took my time, because I discovered that love. So when I did my own shopping, I took my time, and, I would see other customers, like when I was a cashier. So I'd see customers buying different things like that I didn't, I would actually stop and be like, oh, what's this? Like, how do you cook this? What do you do with it? Like, I always asked people, like, if it was something I didn't know. So
yeah, I get asked that by cashiers all the time. What's this? I'm like,
yeah,
it's to make my kimchi. And they're like, what's that? And then it's like, the people behind me are like, can you please go forward, pay already?
No one cares.
And I'm telling them what the ingredients are, and I'm spelling them out like an English teacher would. And,
Yeah.
How annoying.
And that's the thing with me is I didn't just, like, I would do that same thing, but I didn't just ignore it after. I didn't lose it after. I remembered that, and I would go and buy it and then see what I could do with it. And of course, now with the internet, there's nothing off limits. Like, you can literally buy the most obscure thing and find a million recipes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So your love of cooking, your love of like appreciating the ingredients, were the ingredients pretty much all whole foods?
Yeah, but that's when it started. That's when I started understand. But I really started to feel like I'm now responsible for my health. I want to make the best choices. It was a long journey to get to where I am now, but it was like a big snowball effect. Like, it just was like more and more and more, that I just really had that responsibility to myself, that it was up to me to look into it. Like, I'm not going to listen to other people. I want to know for myself how I should cook and how I should eat. I was an athlete, so I also wanted to make sure I was performing at my best. And
yeah, you had that motivation from yourself and to look after yourself, which, I think is relatively rare from what I can tell of people of your age at the time, in your early 20s. Often we're not really worried about our health or well-being now because we're like invincible when we're young. We don't think about the effects of what we do now that's going to be on our later life. So you got this interest in real whole foods and cooking and making good meals. And then something happened later in your life that we share, that we have in common. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I struggled to have a baby. My husband and I were ready. And, when you're younger, think that it's as simple as like, when I'm ready, I'm going to have sex and I'm going to get pregnant. Well, that's not always the case, especially now.
Yeah.
That's absolutely not the case anymore,
Yeah.
So we tried for a long time, a year. Like, they consider it a year, like that if you've been trying and not had any kind of success. I mean, I didn't even have, a failed pregnancy. Like, I just never got pregnant. Like, month after month, my period came and we were having sex, and I couldn't understand. I just couldn't understand that.
Yeah. How old were you at this time?
I was 30 when we started the first time. I remember it was after my 30th birthday. I was ready. Yeah. And it's crazy to me because I spent all this time as a, young adult, late teenager, young adult, protecting against getting pregnant,
Yes, I know.
and then all of a sudden it was like, well, did I even need to bother? Like, did I even need to take that birth control pill? So yeah, we weren't getting pregnant. And then, so at that time, after the year, I did seek a fertility doctor just to like get some advice at the time, because I wasn't in a career role of health and wellness. I was a dental assistant, actually.
Okay.
Which is still in healthcare, I get, in a way, but yeah, so I wasn't really focused, like my day-to-day wasn't focused on, health and wellness like it is now. So I sought out a fertility doctor because that's just society. Like, that's just what, you're pushed to do. My regular doctor was like, okay, well, here's a referral, go, like this is your only option.
Yeah,
So
it's like checking off a box like they did for me. Okay, you've checked off this box, trying for a year. Here's the next step. Check that off. Fertility doctor.
Well, and that's the thing, because I didn't have any red flags. My periods were normal. I didn't indicate, well, there was no testing done, but they just assumed that because my periods were normal, that I didn't have, certain like things that can contribute to infertility that they know of, the physical things like PCOS or, just those things, right? Like all those things. It was just kind of like exactly what you said. Oh, you've been trying for a year and you haven't? Here, go see this person. There was no further investigation. It didn't matter. Like, okay.
Well, we feel as patients, I felt as a patient that it didn't matter. I'm not saying that it didn't for the doctor, but, I think my doctor was a general practitioner, family doctor. It wasn't his thing, infertility and all the around women's reproductive health. That wasn't his speciality. So he couldn't have done much, even if it was important to him.
Right. Well, but now we know, like, that's sort of my beef with it all. Although, I mean, I wouldn't have the career I do if, they were a little more diligent. But I wasn't ever asked, what are you eating and what is your exercise routine like? And, it just, there was no, and it is what you said, like, that's just not their thing, but doctors are trained to fix, an illness or an ailment of some sort. Well, when there isn't anything physically happening, they don't know, like he didn't know what to do. He's like, here, go see this person. Like, there's nothing for you to fix, in his mind. So yeah. So I went to see the fertility doctor just to see, it's looking back now, it was just like a big daze. Like, I didn't know anything back then. I look back and I feel like, wow, I was just like this little child, not knowing what to do. And, so, I went to see him and, originally, and, he wanted to run some tests on myself and my husband. And, it was all a whirlwind. Like it was very overwhelming because I actually couldn't believe that I was even doing that. Like my mom never struggled having children. My sister had 3 kids, you know,
Did you
I was just
feel,
shocked.
you were shocked? Yeah, I remember that feeling well. Did you feel that you were in some way broken, malfunctioning?
Well, absolutely. I also had I had a big mental piece to that too, where I felt like I was being punished. Like, did I do something earlier in life? Like, was I not good enough? Like, did I make that mistake and now I'm being like, you don't deserve to raise a child? Or, I went through that,
Yeah.
Big time. I think more than the broken, which is a huge piece. Like, you do feel like, why can I not do the one thing I was, put on the earth to do? And I don't mean that like women are meant to have babies. I just meant like women, like fundamentally, like our physiology, we are meant to have babies. So why, if I can't do it, no one else, like who, no one else can do it. So, but the broken piece, because there was nothing indicating that I had an actual fertility issue. Like there were no signs. Like I said, I didn't have PCOS. I had regular periods in their eyes. Now I know differently that there's a lot more to it, but it was more for me, like I felt like I was being punished by, something I might have done in previously that was like, you don't deserve a child.
Yeah, we get into this tailspin of beating ourselves up, and I know we've talked about this before, where it's not just the physical side of infertility that's difficult, it's what we do to ourselves in our heads.
Yeah. Oh, it's a spiral. Like you can quickly get on that roller coaster and it's hard to get off.
And, I would say we were talking about weight before. I never really had to deal with the weight issue, but this infertility issue for me, and I don't want to bring this just on to myself, but I know we share this infertility issue that I lived with for 4 years, made me, it just made me as down on myself as I see a lot of other people are for their weight. And for me, it was because of my infertility.
Yeah.
So when you went to get all these tests done for you and for your husband, what came of that?
Well, at that time when I came home and, I was I was 30, or I get this case, I guess I was 31 now. And we didn't move forward with it. We didn't end up doing the tests.
Okay.
I don't know. It caused a lot, of course, going through infertility, it can cause some discord in your relationship.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
So we stopped sort of trying at that time and just decided that we needed to just give ourselves a break. We needed to get back to ourselves, him and I. And we just weren't prepared for that. We weren't prepared to have that diagnosis. Like, you have to go see a fertility doctor. Like, we just weren't prepared like emotionally. Like, we didn't really know what it entailed, and it was very overwhelming, and it caused, a lot of issues, and there's a lot of blame. It's a bad situation for some couples. Like, so we stopped trying. And we didn't move forward with the fertility. And then, I guess like a long time later, like 5 years later, is when we started trying again.
I just wanted to take a quick break to encourage you to share this podcast with anyone who might be open to starting their life after sugar. And could I please ask you to scroll down and give this podcast a lovely 5-star rating and leave a review to tell me how this podcast is inspiring you in your life after sugar. For example, here's a review by Carrie, who said, "Not only is Netta a joy to listen to, Thank you, Carrie. The content of this podcast is very interesting, incredibly informative, and extremely helpful. I have learned so much and can't wait to hear more episodes. I've been following a sugar-free, gluten-free, and soy-free diet for over a month and feel fabulous. I plan to continue for the rest of my life because I just feel so good. I have so much energy, have lost the last 5 pounds, look younger, and feel all around fantastic. Can't even imagine going back to my old way of eating. Thank you, Carrie. And bravo to you. It's wonderful reading how much better you feel in your life after sugar.
And it was just the same pattern. And then we went back to the fertility doctor, and then we move forward with that.
Okay. And in between the 2 times, did you sort of look into it, or did you just put it completely aside? Or by look into it, I mean, did you look at any so-called alternative ways that you could stack the cards in your favor to get pregnant?
No. I think that I just wanted to ignore it and just, I would tell myself like, oh, well, fate, it's just not our time. So we'll just try another time. Like I just completely ignored it and just assumed that when it's my time, it will happen. So no, I didn't look into anything. I also we were dealing with other things, right? Like I wanted to make sure that we were really working on our relationship, and that was more important at the time because we had suffered a little bit of a breakdown, like a breakdown in our relationship as a result of the fertility issue. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, get that.
I was more focused on that at the time.
Yeah, very wise as future parents, very wise indeed. So the second time around, in the end, you did get the fertility tests done.
Mm-hmm.
And what came of that?
Oh, well, it's very easy to be told that it's easier to go IVF and sort of have the wool pulled over your eyes and not know. And then once you enter into that system, it's like, it's not easier at all. And so, yeah, there are a lot of tests done on both of us. It's just such a icky time. Like, it's just so invasive, and like, you certainly can't be shy. Like, you can't be modest or shy. Like,
no more taboos when you're in the IVF world.
Yeah. I mean, you literally conceive a baby without your husband even being in the room, basically.
Yeah, actually, you're not even there.
Yeah, that's true.
I was 3 hours away from the clinic when my kid was conceived.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. So yeah, it turns out my husband had some sperm issues according to the tests, and I didn't necessarily have any major red flags. I didn't have PCOS. I know I keep referring to PCOS, but that's like one of the major like physical things that you can have,
which is polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Oh, yes, sorry, I should have said that. I did not have endometriosis, which is another common. I didn't have fibroids. Like I just didn't have anything physical, but that's when I kind of attribute, like for me with clients, when there's no, when they call it unexplained infertility.
Yeah, and they say that the unexplained infertility makes up for about 30% of all types of infertility, which is, or even more. And that was one of the most frustrating things. It's like, thanks for the statistic. That makes me feel better.
Well, it's like they gave a name to something to make it seem like it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's not a thing. Like, I actually, if a client comes to me and they don't have an actual diagnosis of some sort of, infertility like, I get excited because I know that is lifestyle. Right. I think unexplained infertility is like bonus. Like, we don't have to deal with anything now. Now we can just clean up your lifestyle. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, like, people have terrible lifestyles. I just mean like there are a lot of contributing factors that we don't know, like in society, that we don't realize contribute to that. So, I didn't know that then though.
Yeah, and nor did
I,
I. And if you'd have told me,
Mhm.
if you'd have asked me, what are you eating? I would have been on the defensive to say, hey,
Mhm.
I'm already dealing with unexplained infertility. Don't you try and blame me and my diet
Mhm.
and my lifestyle.
Mhm.
Do you get
I
that?
know.
Do you get people sort of being as on the defensive as I would have been?
Yeah, when they're not ready, usually at this early stages, when they're still really listening, like still really like putting all their eggs in the doctor's basket.
Yeah,
Again, I don't mean that rudely. I just,
that's a good choice of expression.
but then eventually, because what the doctors are doing aren't working either. So, when you get to your last straw and you're just like, I'll try anything. That's sort of when my clients come to me.
Yeah.
Because then they're willing to hear those things, because they are just willing to try like a last ditch effort,
Right. Totally. Yes, which is when people come to see me for sugar, to kick
Mm-hmm.
sugar as
I
well.
bet.
Yeah. I've tried it all or most things, and now I'm ready to try the one thing that I was, against trying. Because
Mm-hmm.
because we are ready at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So can we just get back to your story? Because
Sorry.
everyone wants to know, did you have a baby?
I did. So, it's very exciting. I'm very grateful. I'm extremely grateful that, we have my daughter. And I am grateful that there was something that I could turn to, because in my case, it was successful. So in one way, I'm very thankful for IVF and the doctors and the research and doing that. So yes, but yeah, I now know that there are there are other ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wish I would have done that if I had have known.
Right. I mean, you go down this path for IVF where,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but we tried a whole load of other things in between, sort of just trying naturally and IVF. We did all sorts of other medical procedures,
Mm-hmm.
and none of which worked. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was, for me, IVF was a last ditch effort. And
Mm-hmm.
apart from that, I could not see any other option. If that hadn't worked, which it did first time for us, luckily,
Mm-hmm.
if that
Mm-hmm.
hadn't worked, I just couldn't see any other possibility.
Yeah.
And what
But
I understand you're giving people is another possibility.
well, absolutely. And let me just say about the IVF working. Now that when I first entered into the whole IVF world at the time, because I didn't know anything about IVF, like I didn't even know anyone at the time personally that had to do that. So I just assumed that because it was sort of like a man-made procedure, I assumed it was like a no, like 100%, like we do it for you so you don't have to, and here you go, here's your baby. I assumed it was going to happen no matter what. So when I went into that first meeting and he was going over just like so nonchalantly, like in passing, the percentage of it working, the IVF working, and I'm like, what do you mean working? Doesn't it just work? And he's like, oh no, like, it's less than, it's like 30, you might have to fact check that, but it's like 30% of
Yeah.
all procedures. And now I know, being in that world, that like, I've met people that have gone through 13 rounds of IVF
Oh my gosh.
and it's not working. And so it worked for me on the very first try. And at the time, that's when I started pivoting my business. Like I did, within that 5 years, when I was saying we stopped trying, that's when I had launched my, health and holistic health coach business. And I was just sort of coaching people, on general health. That's when I started. And to think about these, like to dive it, because I was wondering why, I'm healthy. Why did this happen to me? And that's when I started to pinpoint some of these, lifestyle issues. And I 100% attribute that to my first try success with IVF when so many other women don't get that. So I just needed to throw that in, that like it makes a difference.
Because what I understand is you had already changed your diet and lifestyle as you were doing, or before you did that first round of IVF that was successful for you. And by the way, just as an aside, our daughters were born on the same date.
Yes.
Same year.
Not the same year, but the same day. Yes.
2nd of March. Yeah. So, all right. So what did you change about your diet and lifestyle? And, you know, this is the Life After Sugar podcast. What does any of this have to do with sugar, I wonder?
Oh, gosh. Well, as you know, sugar is just probably the worst food on the planet. And I'm talking about the white, sort of like the man-made white refined sugar. Obviously, I'm not talking about, sugar in fruit or, that kind of thing, but I'm talking about, white sugar. Probably the worst thing on the planet. It can cause so many things, like so many things that we deal with that are not ideal, with our health and our mentality and our emotional state. If you have a diet high in sugar, you can guarantee that that's going to be one of the causing factors of, things you might be dealing with. And so it was easy for me to cut out sugar because I joke because I'm, there's kind of two types of people. There's like sugar people and salty people. Like I'm a salty person, I like salt more. So it wasn't too bad, but I knew that was something I had to pay attention to because like we talked about earlier, you don't just get sugar in things because they're sweet.
Right.
You buy a lot like canned goods and things like that. There's like tons, if you look at the labels, there's tons of sugar in things that you might not know, or you might not think to look just because it's not like a baked good or a sweet product. So I had to, be a little more conscious with that. But dairy. And so the interesting thing with that, in regards to what you do is, I'm sure but there's a ton, like there's so much sugar in dairy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's natural sugar, the lactose. Do you mean the lactose or do you mean the added sugars in?
Well, both, but lactose. And that's the thing people don't understand is that it's like naturally in there, but it's not a natural sugar we should be consuming,
or maybe not in the quantities that we
yeah.
There's 12 grams of lactose in a cup of milk, and and it's not necessarily a bad sugar in the same way as the white sugar is, but we do tend to, in North America especially, consume a lot of unfermented dairy in this, usually milk.
Yeah. And yes, like just to add on to your, like, I know you probably don't want to give it like don't want to villainize it, give it a bad name, but the lactose sugar, like you said, maybe not as bad as like white sugar that's added, but it's bad for fertility.
Okay. So
if we're specifically talking about for fertility, that is something we want to stay away from. And all these things like sugar just wreaks havoc on your hormones. And that's what our bodies are governed by, our hormones. Like every system in our body functions because we have hormones to do it. And that's what sugar is doing. It's directly related to hormone imbalances. And that's the issue.
There's the added sugars, the refined sugars, the sort of so-called natural sugars like the lactose in dairy. That's what you cut out completely or just cut down?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, cut out completely. I'm not on the dairy train. Like that's one of my things, but I work with my clients. I mean, you can't go from 0 to 60 and expect to have a positive result. So
or from 60 to 0
or 60 to 0. Exactly. So I just work with, it depends how aggressive they want to be. what they can manage, because also stress is a big contributing factor to infertility. So we have to look at all those things. There's a scale.
Yes.
There's
And
a
I have
scale.
to say, I remember one of the most stressful things that added to the already stressful situation of infertility was other people telling me to stop being stressed.
Oh,
I was like, shut up.
isn't that the most annoying thing? Like,
More than
okay.
annoying. Yeah, it was one of the worst things is other people. When are you going to have a baby? Oh, well, it's probably, you just should relax. I'm like, yeah, just please don't give me
good. I'm glad that you told me that. Now I will. Like,
yes,
that's not how it works.
Yeah, if I was just waiting for that wonderful piece of advice.
Exactly.
And the next day I'm pregnant. Not.
Yeah.
So there's that. And so was there anything else, or is there anything else that you now tell not tell, but that you advise your clients to do in relation to sugar and their fertility?
Well, basically, in relation to sugar, it is to cut out the sugar. Like, we need to see in what areas. It's a whole workup, because I need to see in what areas, like if we're talking about sugar and food, what you're eating, because like we've talked about, it doesn't just mean, that baked good that you're eating, that's the only place you're getting sugar. Like, there's so many other ways, and it's not anyone's fault, but you just don't sometimes know where sugar can come into your life. So that's basically what we'll take a look at when we look at the nutrition part of your lifestyle and your food, and what kinds of issues you have. I referred to PCOS earlier in this, and that's one of the main causes of fertility issues. Well, there's 4 types of PCOS, and the common one is insulin resistance PCOS. So it's a whole puzzle. Like, that's the piece. Like, so then you can take care of that. One of the things that contributes to that is too much sugar. So yeah, we have to look at the whole picture, but definitely it's something that it has to be cut out. And now someone asked me once, I was shocked, but I have to remember that some people just, you don't know what you don't know. And like, some people just don't know a lot about nutrition. And so someone asked me, we were talking about sugar, and I was like, you have to cut it out. Like, you have to at least start. And she said, well, and we were talking about salt and sugar and everything, and the recommend daily value and da da da. And then she was like, well, how much sugar can you have? And I kind of looked at her like, well, none. Like, there is no recommended daily value of sugar. Like, again, I'm not talking about fruit, but if there is no recommended daily value of sugar. Your body doesn't need that kind of sugar. Your body doesn't need white refined sugar. It doesn't need it at all. No. So there is no recommended daily value. So we need to cut it out. You have to stop eating sugar. And and again, that, like, as like, that doesn't mean a life of not eating something sweet.
Or a life of being completely sad and joyless,
or deprived. Yeah, like, it's not about being deprived. It's like, what can we add in place that's just as sweet, that's going to add food. I always say, like, food is either contributing to your illness, or it's either causing or contributing to your illness, or it's going to help it. No part of sugar is helping that.
That's right. And it's confusing for consumers, and just generally for us, because the World Health Organization is out there telling us to keep free sugars, as they call it, down to below so many teaspoons. I think it's 6 teaspoons a day for women. And so it kind of gives the impression that you're okay to consume up to 6 teaspoons a day. And then and then even the food labels in Canada where we are, the total carbs is 300 grams a day, and they don't even distinguish between the carbs. So that also makes the consumer think, if we're so inclined, it makes the consumer think, well, I'm all right, up to 300 grams a day.
Yeah. Oh, it's absurd. And exactly, it's like smoke and mirrors, because that kind of where that I was talking about that previous client about the recommended daily value of sugar. And that's where people think that there is an allowance.
Yeah.
Like you should have this amount to function.
Right.
No, like yes, our body runs on sugar, but not that kind of sugar.
It doesn't run on, yes, it runs on glucose. And then that's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah. Well, but I just want to make it clear that we're not talking about that. We're not talking about fruit. I don't not eat fruit is what I don't want people to get that impression. That's what I worry about. I have so many people in a day tell me like, oh, like you shouldn't eat a banana. There's so much sugar in a banana. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, it's a
whole separate topic.
A whole separate topic. So tell us who you help and how people can get in touch with you.
Well, I help, like I said, I usually get the women and couples. I don't usually have men come to me on their own, but I help men, as part of the couple, because they're usually more willing when they're, so women and couples, usually they come to me at that point, like I was saying earlier, where like that last ditch effort, like I'm willing to try everything. Like, this wasn't important to me before, but now I'm willing to try everything. So that's sort of where I get a lot of clients. I like that because they are willing to look at things in an objective way. But I appeal to anyone that's just been trying and coming up short, whether that's a few months or that's 2 years. If you want to conceive in the way we were intended to conceive, with your husband, naturally, then I can help you 100%. And, I help other people. Like I said, if you already entered into the IVF world, I get some clients where like I can help that be successful. So they've already done that, but we can, help that be successful. But the majority of my clients haven't gone there yet.
Okay.
I like to catch them before they go there because I don't advocate IVF.
Gotcha. Okay. And how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I am, of course, on social media, Facebook, Instagram. My business name is Pride Holistic Health on both. And of course, from there, I have links to, email or my website. I don't really have an actual website. It's more of just like a informational, like booking site. But yeah, there's links to that. But yeah, Pride Holistic Health.
Okay, I'll put the link with the show notes.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm always available, like reach out. And anyway, I always say, if you have any questions, even if you don't know what the question is yet, just get on a call with me and we can go from there. And there's no obligation. Like it's scary at that time. So there's no obligation. Any questions are welcome. A conversation is welcome.
Yes, because it is a very vulnerable time.
Very.
Yeah, I totally get that. And it's great that we have all this in common. I wish we didn't, in a way.
Yeah. Yes.
The silver lining is that, we met each other through these things that we have in common through our infertility journey. And now we're friends, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And thank you so much for talking with me today, Robyn.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome. Oh, what a wonderful chat with Robyn. And isn't it amazing, all these things that we have in common, not just our infertility journey, not just IVF, but the fact that our daughters, even though they're several years apart, were born on the same date. And I wish I'd have had someone like Robyn around when I was on my infertility journey and feeling like a failure, feeling so vulnerable, like I couldn't even do the basic natural human function of a woman of getting pregnant. And for us, it was a 4-year journey of unexplained infertility, lots and lots of medical procedures, lots and lots of failures. It was awful, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And if I'd have known then what I know now about sugar, well, I think I would have tried a dietary change in addition to the medical procedures that we tried. But, you can't turn back time. And as I was saying to Robyn, the silver lining is that we had our lovely daughter Lily, who was born in 2008 and who's 14 now at the time of recording. And now she has the advantage of living with a sugar-free, joyful mom who has a podcast all about life after sugar. So if you want to get in touch with Robyn, I'm putting her details in the show notes. And if you want some free resources about what real whole foods are and where the processed food companies hide those sneaky sugars, then head on over to my website, aftersugarclub.com, and click on the tab, What to Eat. You'll find 3 videos there, one about which foods don't have added sugars, another about how to find these foods at the grocery store, and the 3rd video is about what's the deal with fermented foods, because these are also whole foods that look after your gut health, and gut health is central to your general health. And while you're there on the website at aftersugarclub.com, download my 5 tips for getting rid of cravings. Whether you're an intermittent faster or not, cravings can really stop you from feeling free with your food. So download those 5 tips at aftersugarclub.com. And you can get more free resources and tips on the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, the Life After Sugar Facebook page, and come and subscribe to my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar. That's where I post pictures of what I eat, what I do, sometimes some inspiring quotes, or sometimes just pictures of our cat, so that you can see that it's totally possible to live a fun and active life even if you don't eat sugar. And if you're ready to get some personal guidance, support, and accountability so that you can let go of sugar and feel more confident in your food choices and feel healthier because you've finally made peace with sugar so that you get to a point where you don't need it or miss it anymore, then I have 2 different offerings for you. The first is the Life After Sugar program, where you get 12 weeks of personalized, customized support and guidance from me with frequent accountability calls according to your availability and time zone so that we can keep in touch as often as you need to make sure that you let go of sugar step by step and discover real freedom from sugar. That's the Life After Sugar program at aftersugarclub.com, and in the top menu, click on the Program tab. And if you need more of a self-study format with less frequent check-ins with me, then the After Sugar Club may be a better fit for you. Go check it out at aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button, Join the Club. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.